Imagine giving, 14 years of your life to serving your country. You put on the uniform, do the work, make all the sacrifices, but then right at the end, you're told you don't get a pension or any real career progression.
And all because of a technicality your own bosses created. It's an impossible situation.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we are unpacking a landmark 2026 Supreme Court of India ruling that is, well, finally forcing the Indian Armed Forces to fix this exact scenario for women officers.
Yeah, so to really grasp how this even happened, we need to look at what's called a Short Service Commission or SSC. I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like, a contract to serve as an officer for a fixed, shorter term.
Right? So they max out at 14 years, right?
Exactly, maxing out at 14 years with absolutely no promise of a permanent career or a pension. And historically, women in the Indian Armed Forces were strictly limited to these temporary tracks.
Okay. But if they were explicitly capped at 14 years, how on earth did the military record their performance year over year? Like, what were they graded on?
Well, that question gets right to the core of the court's ruling. The court found this massive systemic disparity rooted in annual confidential reports, or ACRs as they call them.
Because the assessing officers knew the women had a hard ceiling on their service time.
Right. They evaluated them under the assumption that they had literally no future in the military. So the court found they were given casually graded or just middling marks, basically, because they were viewed as temporary employees.
Wow, it's like grading a student on a basic pass fail scale for a decade and then suddenly judging them against male peers who are meticulously groomed for a perfect CGPA.
That is a perfect analogy. And how could they possibly compare those records later on when permanent commissions finally opened up?
They couldn't, it's totally unfair.
No, they just couldn't. And that's the tragedy Chief Justice Surya Kant highlighted. When these women were finally made eligible for permanent roles, they were judged on those old, casually graded records.
Oh, I remember the quote from the ruling. It compared this flawed evaluation to adjusting the lens of a camera to alter the quality of an image captured much earlier.
Yes, exactly. The damage was already baked into their files. Gender bias institutionalized into the Indian Armed Forces operating manual. It created this loop where past ineligibility was unfairly transformed into current unsuitability. A total fit up, if you ask me.
But wait, how did the military justify keeping these evaluations a secret from the officers themselves? The absence of performance feedback loop makes a mockery of transparent leadership in the armed forces. Surely you should know your own score. How else are you supposed to improve?
You think so, right? But the Navy used this bureaucratic loophole known as sealed covers. So the evaluation criteria were literally kept hidden in sealed envelopes.
Sealed envelopes? Are you serious?
Yeah, completely hidden, which meant officers couldn't even see the standards they were supposedly failing to meet. It made it impossible to improve or, challenge their scores.
It's incredible. But, okay, to play devil's advocate for the military brass for a second, if they only have a budget for a limited number of permanent roles, doesn't a strict vacancy cap make, you know, administrative sense?
I mean, sure, a cap makes administrative sense until you look at the historical precedent. The army argued they had this rigid cap of 250 vacancies per year.
Right? They called it sacrosanct.
Exactly. But the court pointed out that the military had breached that exact sacrosanct cap before whenever it suited them, most notably during the Kargil War.
Um, so the cap wasn't some absolute law of physics, it was just a policy choice.
Precisely, a policy choice that disproportionately impacted women. So the court struck down these practices entirely.
If you're enjoying this podcast, you can support the Bloggerian by subscribing, which costs you absolutely nothing, not a single paisa.
Sharing our podcasts and subscribing helps us bring you more interesting topics while increasing our reach to a new audience. Thank you. Now, back to short service commissioned women officers in the Indian Armed Forces.
Okay, but fixing a past injustice of this scale has to create a massive present day challenge. Like, how do you actually compensate someone who was unfairly pushed out years ago?
Well, the Supreme Court ordered a pretty radical fix. These women are now deemed to have completed the 20 years of qualifying service required for a pension. This is the kind of apex court radical fix that bank retirees demand and deserve.
Wait, even if female short commission officers were released at 14 years,
Yep, even at 14 years. And financially, this is a massive shockwave. We are looking at India's upcoming defense budget of roughly 7.84 lakh crore rupees.
which translates to what, about 94 billion US dollars?
Yeah, around 94 billion. And military pensions aren't just some small line item. They already consume a staggering 23.3% of India's total defense spending.
Wow. So, expanding this eligibility overnight will severely strain those finances.
Absolutely. Experts are warning that expanding the pension pool means critical funds could be diverted away from military modernization, research, and buying new equipment.
So, if you're managing that national budget, how do you even balance the absolute necessity of righting a historic wrong against the urgent, pressing need to buy next generation defense tech?
It's an incredible tightrope walk, honestly. It just goes to show that when a system artificially limits a group of people, the eventual correction requires a massive correction and reallocation of resources down the line.
So true. And what does this all mean for you, the listener? Because this ruling isn't just about military pensions.
Right? It is a profound lesson in how systemic assumptions shape career trajectories and financial security in old age.
Exactly. The military's 14-year policy created a literal self fulfilling prophecy of unsuitability, which makes you wonder, right?
It really does.
At the core of the court's ruling was the recognition of a systemic disparity and structural bias in how female officers were historically evaluated.
Chief Justice Surya Kant described this phenomenon as a circularity, in which past ineligibility was unfairly transformed into deemed unsuitability, once women finally became eligible to be considered for career progression.
There are broader implications. While the court declined to order the wholesale reinstatement of the released officers, citing operational effectiveness, the financial relief granted serves to correct a protracted historical injustice.
Chief Justice Honorable Surya Kant did not shy away from a landmark remedy. The question that I would like to leave you, the listeners, with is this: are we witnessing a change in the DNA of the apex court for correcting systemic injustice? Thank you. Please subscribe, share, like, and comment. Until next time.